Jessica for spelling that out. That's very helpful. And I will leave you in good hands. You've got a great panel, and I'm sure you're going to get into some really important issues. So thank you very much. I'm going to go off to another meeting. I appreciate your indulgence, and keep up the good work and keep up the good leadership.
Well, thank you, Senator Favola, for your comments and updates. And I think we've been, the NAACP, the state legislature, and many stakeholders in and around Virginia right now have been very busy preparing for this special session. So again, thank you for what you're doing, and you're always welcome to come to the NAACP. All right. With that being said, you can see on the agenda, well, excuse me, not see on the agenda, but we are tabling the minutes because they are archived virtually right now. The secretary has those. Well, one thing we need to do and get out the way is next month, NAACP National has decided that we're going to have our national convention virtually. And for that, what we need to do at the branch level is allow our members to vote on who our delegates are going to be. We've put a call out to anyone who wanted to participate, and we have 4 individuals, members that are willing to serve as delegates for our branch. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a poll up, and if you are a member of this branch, you're going to be asked to choose. Here we go. I'm going to launch the poll. The 111th National Convention to be held virtually August 2nd through 6th. And this will allow Julius D. Spain, Kent Carter, Ms. Detta Cassell, and Sharice Kearns to serve as delegates on behalf of Arlington Branch 7047. I'm going to launch the poll. So if you're a member, choose. If you're not a member, abstain. Give it a few more minutes, excuse me, a few more seconds. We're at 75%. Five more seconds. I am closing the poll and sharing the results. Okay, so Mr. Julius Spain, Kent Carter, Detta Cassell, Sharice Kearns will serve as delegates on behalf of the Arlington Branch NAACP. The convention will be held August 2nd through the 6th, virtually. Cost associated with that is about $30 per individual. So we will be working hard on your behalf at the national level during the convention. Thank you. Okay. I have a few more minutes here. Is Detta, are you on? We have so many people here. Are you on right now?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Detta.
Hi.
So I just want to bring you up so you can talk to, we put a call out last month about individuals to volunteer on our committees. And without giving away their names, can you talk briefly about how many members have joined your political action committee in the past several weeks?
Yes, we went from having 1 member to 8 members. And we've had an initial meeting. We're having a makeup meeting for those who couldn't be at the initial meeting. And we went through the various activities that we do, and we found that we have a legislative expert who is going to be helping with the special session preparation. and that's great. And we also had someone who wanted to organize and essentially take over the postcard activity, which is great. We have a legislative tracker, which is great. So there's a lot of very excited people, and we're getting people involved, hitting the ground running.
Thank you, Detta. Do I have anyone from the Criminal Justice, Education Committee on? Cherie, are you on yet?
Simone's on. I can't see Cherise. I need to switch to gallery.
We have a lot going on, and I had a few more time.
There she is.
A little bit of time left on my side, but do you just want to give a quick 30-second update on what's going on in your committee and the kind of work we're doing and what we're about to perhaps partake on? Just about 30 seconds. Is she's on?
You're muted, Cherise. Go ahead. You're muted. We can't hear you.
She's on mute. She's muted.
Okay, hold on.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry about that. I actually just woke up from a nap. So, so we are working right now. Our immediate issue is working up a set of recommendations to propose to the executive committee on the presence of SROs in schools. So we had a very long meeting yesterday, and we looked over the data and have come up with a set of recommendations that we're now in the process of drafting. So that's our one big thing. We're also working on getting our assignments for the 2020-21 year to the ACTL advisory committees, as well as finalizing our strategic plan. And that's our big things right now in a nutshell. If you're interested in learning more, we'll be having our next education committee meeting coming up in the next few weeks, and we can circulate that date and time through the distribution list, if that would help people to who may be interested in getting involved.
Okay, thank you very much. Kent or James, are either one of you on? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Say James is.
Who was that?
James.
This is James.
Hey, James, any updates you want to provide briefly from the Criminal Justice Committee?
I can give you some brief overview of some of the legislation that just was passed.
Yeah, give us about a minute of that.
Okay, first of all, to clarify the legislation about marijuana has not been legalized. It has been just simply decriminalized, which means that people who are picked up for marijuana will get issued a civil fine, more like a ticket, as opposed to an arrest, and that will not go on their record as being a criminal arrest. Also, with regard to conduct in the schools, students who are on school property, in the school or around the school, elementary as well as secondary school, if they're involved in a disorderly act, it will not count as a disorderly conduct. In other words, it will not be any longer a criminal offense, something that should not have happened over the years. Principals used to handle that type of thing. Also, another piece of legislation eliminates the requirement that school principals report to law enforcement certain acts that constitute a misdemeanor offense. I guess to replace that, there's legislation that requires school resource officers to report data to the Department of Criminal Justice Services in reference to incidents that happen in the schools, particularly those incidents that involve students and resource officers.
Okay.
Also, there's one other piece of legislation, school resource officers are now required to have or meet specific training standards within a certain period of time within assuming a position as a school resource officer. And that includes liability issues, mediation and conflict resolution classes, and training and de-escalation techniques, as well as emergency and disaster response. So those are some of the pieces of legislation that were just recently passed. And as Senator Favola said, there's going to be another legislative session coming up very soon. And I expect some additional legislation with respect to forwarding justice.
Okay. Thank you, James. I'm going to share an update here with the group in just a second. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of time and wish and thank, I should say, a few individuals who have joined the NAACP recently, and they have successfully paid their $750 and are now Silver Life members for the NAACP. A congratulations goes out to each and every one of them. Their names are on the screen, and we just want to take a moment, again, on behalf of all the members, and thank you for your lifetime commitment to the NAACP. Now, what this tells us is that we have about 450 other people out there right now that need to get life memberships. So continue to push on, but I just want to thank everyone, Carolyn, Elizabeth, Will Hack, Elizabeth Howard, Donna Norman, Craig Hines, Melissa Hancock, and Elizabeth Morgan for becoming life members of the NAACP. With that being said, we're going to move on to the next part of our meeting. We have a young lady who's with us. She's not new to Arlington by no means. Many of you have heard her on the radio, seen her in different events around Arlington. She's a civil rights activist, community activist. She knows what she's talking about, and I want to give her an opportunity to come to this branch of the NAACP and not only talk about her book of Hall's Hills, but give this group of members a perspective of, what's been going on in Arlington. Yeah, talk about her book as well, but let you hear from Wilma. So without further ado, Wilma, are you there? Are you prepared to come on?
I am here, JD. Thank you very much for the
All
opportunity.
right, so Wilma, the floor is yours for another 15 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Do you have my presentation?
Did you send it?
I sent it about 2:30.
I have your presentation.
Do you have it, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You have someone working in the background.
So anyway, while we wait for her to put the presentation up, thank you all for giving me a few moments to talk to you a little bit about my history of Arlington and kind of my book and why I wrote it and what's happening since I wrote it.
Give me 1 second.
She had it up.
I had it up. Hold on.
Okay. All righty. It might be a little bit too big. You might want to reduce it a little bit. There you go. So Hall's Hill, which many people know, is now known as kind of Hall's Hill Highview Park. It's in the North Arlington area near Virginia Hospital Center, on Lee Highway, George Mason, Culpeper Street. So next slide. About a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, I wrote a book called My Halls Hill Family, More Than a Neighborhood. It's available on Amazon, and they have a number of copies at the Arlington Public Library. I wrote the book after doing a bunch of research and doing interviews because my parents, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see my parents. My father's George Mason Jones Sr., my mother, Ida Bell Green Jones, were both born and they lived their entire lives on Halls Hill. And they were a treasure trove of information and stories. And I realized I was probably about 2011 when I moved back to Arlington after living in PG County for about 8 years, that if somebody didn't save these stories, that my kids and nieces and nephews and their kids wouldn't know it. And I'll be very honest with you, I was like, I don't want this to be like so many other stories of Black communities where somebody who wasn't a part of the community comes in, 50 years later and writes this story based on census records and newspaper articles and the like. So I asked my parents if they would support it, and they said yes. Surprisingly, my sisters and brothers were very surprised. And I started interviewing them. The plan was to have the book come out in about a year. Other things took precedence and it didn't come out. After my dad died, I was regenerated. I started doing even more interviews with my mom. And again, it fell off to the side. So after my mom died, I said, before a year after her death, I'm going to have this book out. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see my siblings. I am the baby of 7. And so they supported me, did a bunch of interviews, and I pretty much lived at the Center for Local History weekends on Saturdays in Arlington, and I drove down to Richmond to the Library of Virginia, which is a treasure trove of information. But one of the other reasons I wanted to write this book is that gentleman to the left, with the jacket and tie up at the top, is my brother, Michael Jones. And he is one of the 4 students who integrated schools in 1959. And after my dad died, when we were working with my mom and going through things, we found a whole lot of information and details. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna tell this part of the story from our family's perspective. So all my sisters and brothers did interviews and helped me come together with the info. Although I did make a couple of errors on a couple of dates with my family, nothing major in the book. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see there's my brother on the right with his hand in his pocket. If you've read the book, I tell a very funny story about my father, and every time he saw this picture was on the front page of the Washington Post, and it's now like a classic picture. But my dad was very upset with Michael that he seemed to be so casual on such an important day. But that's just Michael. If you know him, that's how he is. So I had the opportunity to kind of tell the Halls Hill story. And I started from the time that it was actually a plantation started by a white man named Basil Hall, all the way up until the 60s when the county closed Langston Elementary School, which was a part of the community that held us together. So the next slide kind of talks about what I feel is the premise of the neighborhood. The 3 things that we were taught to succeed was to have gratitude for what you have faith in yourself, in God and what you can do, and hard work. And that with those 3 things that you could do anything. And if you've ever been to my website at hallshill.com, one of the things that I say is that the life that we lived in this insular little segregated community really prepared us in a way that maybe some other neighborhoods didn't. I think that that's true in all of the Arlington neighborhoods. I think Green Valley, even a stronger neighborhood, having started even before the Civil War with freed Blacks in 1844, and of course, Johnson's Hill. But I think that these neighborhoods and the people who raised us created kind of gave us roots, but they also gave us the kind of confidence and smarts and, public speaking skills and all of that stuff in this little community so that many of us were able to just exceed and excel, despite the fact that we started out at a segregated elementary school. So these three things I think are the bedrocks of the foundation of the community. But also there are some institutions, and I talk about these kind of in length in the book. If you go to the next slide. The first was Callaway Methodist Church, which started a year after the end of the Civil War in 1866 and is still going today. Callaway was started by some slaves who were then plantation workers at a farm near Halls Hill, and they actually have been at this location for almost the entire time that the church has been in existence. So it's an absolutely amazing story. Callaway was part of civil rights, all different kinds of things in the community. Now, the next organization, if you go to the next slide, and here I'm showing you the anniversary folder. As I said, my mother saved everything. This is from the 15th anniversary of one of the iconic pastors of Mount Salvation, Reverend N.R. Richardson, Nathaniel R. Richardson. And Mount Salvation was started in 1879, and the family who kind of really started Mount Salvation was the Pelham family. In the book, I talk about a neighborhood that their family pretty much owned that was near Marymount called Pelhamtown, which was basically obliterated due to institutional racism from Arlington County government. And they did some ugly stuff, like there was a right-of-way that came through that the county let a developer on the other side of that right-of-way actually own the right-of-way, so that all of the Black people who used that were landlocked, and so they had to sell their property. Things like that I was able to go through and document, and that was actually documented in an Arlington County interview with Deacon William Pelham, who lived to be about 100 years old, but he said that, when his family was forced to move, they came to Halls Hill. So Mount Salvation was a critical part of the development of Halls Hill. And then the next slide is Fire Station 8. Many people know Fire Station 8. If you lived in Arlington, Halls Hill did a big effort to keep Fire Station 8 in Halls Hill a few years ago when the county tried to move it up Old Dominion Drive. It is the first fire station staffed by African-American men below the Mason-Dixon line, was started in 1918. We just celebrated their 100th anniversary a couple years ago with the Citizens Association. And this fire station is important for so many reasons. From the perspective of, first of all, preserving and helping to protect our homes, because the white firefighters wouldn't come into our neighborhood. Also leadership, and also, especially in the 1920s and 30s, when the Ku Klux Klan was rampant in Cherrydale, many Black men told the story. My father told me about Black people who would come from Georgetown, and they'd come up Lee Highway past Cherrydale, and KKK members in a truck with a gun rack would chase the Black people down to Halls Hill. And he said when they got to Fire Station 8, they knew they were safe. So this fire station is important to our neighborhood in so many ways, and I tell a number of them in the book, and about the important leaders who were there, and about the fact that we had Girl Scout and Boy Scout meetings in the basement. So, and first place they ever had a Coke vending machine on Halls Hill. The first place they had a telephone. So Halls Hill loved Fire Station 8. It's very important. So the next slide just kind of goes through and just shows you some of the documents that I used to research. Another part of the organizations in the Hill that's still going on that's very important is the Citizens Association, the John M. Langston Citizens Association. Been going on since 1938, one of the first citizens associations in Arlington, and actually the first one to complete and get approved the neighborhood conservation plan. So we're proud of that as well. Next slide. So in the book, I talk about businesses. This business, if you grew up in Arlington and you came on the Hill, you probably knew about Miss Allen's store. It was at 1812 North Columbus Street, and it was the longest running Black business in Halls Hill. My sisters and I all had our first jobs there where we got paid our little 10 or 20 cents an hour under the counter. But everybody knew Mrs. Allen, and go there and get your pickles and my father used to send us around for bologna and hog's head cheese that she would cut off in the little thing that I forget what you call it, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I talk about a lot of different businesses. The Hicks business, all about entrepreneurs in Halls Hill. Next slide. And I also talk about, I go through a lot of history in terms of the development of Halls Hill. I talk about why the walls were built when white neighborhoods came up. And I talk a lot about institutional racism and how Arlington County government, and especially during desegregation, Arlington County schools and the state government just really did everything they could to keep our neighborhoods down. I wrote a blog post yesterday, if you go to my website at hallshill.com, just about how the desegregation of Arlington began in 1947 when a young lady from Green Valley named Constance Carter filed suit because she wanted to go to W&L to take advanced classes. They wouldn't allow it. Arlington County finally let 4 kids in 1959, let a trickle in after that. But literally for 17 years after that, they kept Drew and Hoffman Boston Elementary schools as segregated schools. So those are the kinds of things I point out in the book because I want to make sure that, you know, that nobody can come back and say that didn't happen. This is documented and it happened. And I've got loads and loads of Washington Post and Evening Star and lots of press to show that our people went through this. So this just shows some of the ways that Halls Hill made a difference because people don't know that Lee Highway, which was like a horse route, was the main reason that Arlington got developed like it did, especially after the war. And people don't know that citizens in the county paid, Halls Hill residents helped to pay for the stretch of land on Lee Highway to develop it from Halls Hill to Georgetown, to the bridge. So I bring out all kinds of details like that. Next slide, and we're almost done. So what do I do now? Well, I go around and I try to tell everybody about what's going on with this. What happened in the past, and how my opinions about how we can make it right. I actually have a call coming up this week with the folks about desegregating Virginia education. So I'm doing everything I can, not just the book. I'm working with Challenging Racism. I'm working with Virginia Humanities, doing everything we can to get the message out there. I don't care whether they use curriculum from the Center for Local History or from the Library of Virginia, or I don't care if they make it up from doing what I did, but I think that it's important that we try to get the schools, both in Arlington and Virginia, all over, to tell the real story about desegregation so that our kids don't think that after these 4 kids went to Stratford in 1959, that everything was right. So one thing that actually has just recently happened, which I'm really excited about, is I was asked to consider doing a show on Arlington Independent Media. And I told JD I would announce this tonight, that they have approved and I've agreed that we're gonna do a show called Untold, The Stories of Black Arlington. That'll start in September. And so all of these things that I'm putting on the blog and that I'm saying to these little groups of, 20 or 30 or even 100 or 200 now are going to be a part of this show, available on Verizon, Comcast, and then also on YouTube. So really excited about that. And if you have ideas for stories or things that you're interested in, please shoot me an email and we'll start working. Next week, the blog is all going to be all about Jenny Dean down in Green Valley. So check out Halls Hill. Next slide. This is the website. That little thing right there is this wonderful little graphic or GIF thing, and some wonderful little Halls Hill music. And there's lots of information. There are a couple of 3 or 4 videos on there. There'll be more things to come. But I guess because of everything that's been happening, God bless George Floyd giving his life. But I think that what is happening in this country is long overdue, and I'm just happy to be here. And I feel like this is one of those things, and I'm going to tell all of y'all, especially people from Green Valley and from Johnson's Hill, write the book. Even if you only want to write your little part, write the book, write the story, write a blog, write it down, because this is one of those situations where you don't want to get ready to be ready. The book was already here, and when all this happened, it was available. So write your story. Next slide just has my email and a thanks to everybody. Sorry, I went a couple minutes over, JD.
Well, Wilma, thank you so much. You know, we were, you know, close by, I'll be jumping up and down, but, you know, we thank you for your work, Wilma, and what you've been doing and what you will continue to do, not just to keep the legacy of African-Americans of Arlington alive, but, you know, tell the truth, right? And you know, as we continue to grow here in Arlington and becoming more inclusive and diverse, you know, municipality, city, county, you know, we have to know how it all started, right? And appreciate our rich history and the history of African Americans, more especially what they did here in Arlington heretofore. So thank you, Wilma.
JD.
You know, it's all great.
Hey, JD.
Yes, Cherie.
I would love to have Ms. Jones come back for a longer session, maybe as part of our ed committee. I just wanted to throw that out to the universe and hope that she will come and talk to us.
Okay.
And give us a special audience so we have more time and we're able to get into more detail.
I would love to do that. And actually, if you'd like to, we could kind of do a one-off. I have all kinds of information. I have stacks of Washington Post articles and news things from the county and stuff that you all might find valuable, that folks don't want you to know, but if you have it in your back pocket, it really helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll reach out to you.
No problem.
Thank you again. And again, thank you to everyone who's still on the call and hanging with us. I'm sitting here at my home in Penrose, and I hear the thunderclouds rolling in the background. And I'm wondering, is the power going to go out? No, not in Arlington. Can't happen. But be that as it may, we're going to move on in our agenda. I was going to ask our first vice president, who's also the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, to introduce our next guest speaker, but he's engaged with something right now. But Mark Schwartz, the county manager for Arlington County, can you come up on the screen, sir?
Yeah, can you see me, Julius?
Oh yes, you look lovely, Mark.
Great.
Listen, I'm not going to take too much time doing a formal introduction. You are the county manager here for Arlington County. We have spoke with you many times, especially quite often in the past couple of weeks. We've had a lot of conversations, and I would hope that during this time you can talk to this review of police policy and practices just a little bit, so our audience will get some understanding of what you're looking at in the next couple months, and what's the charge to this committee, right? And ultimately, they're going to come back with recommendations, but how these recommendations become reality and be put in place, right? So we can have these committees, we can put all this together, but what are we expecting to happen on the backside once the recommendations are made? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, for a little bit, and then we're going to go over to Delegate Hope on the backside of this meeting. Mark?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Julius. And I also want to thank everybody who's here tonight, and especially Wilma. I don't carry this around with me, but I actually read it in the last few months. I've been doing a project about the 1920 census, and there was a lot of really great information in there. So first off, thanks to everyone. And I have had several conversations with Julius and with Kent over the last few weeks. The first piece of advocacy since the George Floyd murder from the NAACP here in Arlington was pushing for body-worn cameras. And I appreciate your pushing that, and that tomorrow night the county board is taking up the adoption of our CIP, which is a one-year plan, and which I've included investments for those body-worn cameras, and also going to take up a proposal to provide the staffing for that. So that's progress, just a little bit of progress and a lot of work ahead of us. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm calling the police practices group. There was an announcement that went out on Thursday. So the county board had directed me to, quote, take a look at how our police department is doing. And so what we've done is we've set up a group that has 15 members. Kent Carter, who's the vice president here, is one of those members. And the group is going to do a couple of things. The first is we're calling in some outside consultants, people who have no relationship with the Arlington County Police Department, to do an assessment. Take a look at what our policies are, what our practices have been, and compare that to, I'll call it best practices or reform practices that are out there. And so that's going to cover a wide range of areas. For example, use of force policies, questions about how data is gathered, additional questions, for example, around training and supervision, how body-worn cameras are going to be used, policies around that, and taking a look at supervision, taking a look at the whole range of issues that make the daily doings of our department. And so do that fairly quickly, hopefully come back with an assessment that will be shared. Assessment is going to be shared publicly by the end of September. In the meantime, the group of 15 people are going to convene in, I think it's 2 weeks, August 3rd. And their charge is, while they're awaiting the results of that assessment, to take a look at some big policy issues. And so those policy issues fall into 4 buckets. The first one is not whether we should have a civilian review board, because we absolutely should have one, but to do a survey of what kinds there are and make a recommendation as to the correct approach and how to use a civilian review board. That's the first bucket. Second one is to take a look at how right now in the county, our police department interact with our mental health services. A lot of law enforcement time is spent dealing with people who have mental health issues. And there's been a lot of debate about what's the best way to provide mental health services to our community. So you'll take a look on the 15 members of the group. I have a few people who have some expertise in that area. That's the second bucket. Third bucket has to do with traffic enforcement. So prior to COVID, and it's hard to remember when that was, but I proposed a budget in February that had what I was really excited about, which was to hire, just as a pilot, 6 or 7 staff that would work in the police department and be responsible for traffic enforcement, but would not carry guns. The point being that a lot of the traffic issues we have in the county, I don't think require a police officer to show up with a gun. Now, I'm going to say something which may seem trite. I get nervous when I'm stopped by a police officer, and I have been several times for perhaps rolling through a stop sign at Barton and Pershing, but we won't focus on that at the moment. And I can't imagine what it's like for other people who it's just a very tense situation. And I think that police could look at different ways, or maybe not the police, look at different ways of trying to look at traffic enforcement. The fourth bucket, which is in some ways the most difficult part of it, I'll call it, are there alternatives? And this is, again, not very original, but the default option for a lot of our fellow Arlingtonians is if they have a problem, they call 911. So their, quote, problem could be somebody suspicious walking down the street. And so they call 911. The default decision by those dispatchers in 911 is to get the police out and dispatch them. There's a lot of work I think we could do to try, hopefully, to educate our residents. But even if they, quote, make a bad, I'll say it, a bad call, there's a homeless person on the corner. Why is it that we have to dispatch police? Let's take a look at all those protocols and figure out a way to do it, and spend some time on, I'll call it, alternative dispute resolution. I encourage you all to tune in tomorrow. There's going to be a very, I think, compelling presentation made by Leanne Roselle, who's an Arlington resident, who's been working with my office since January on restorative justice. And we're also working quite closely with the Carter School on mediation. And so neighbor to neighbor, let's figure out how we deal with disputes. So I think at this point, I ran through that pretty quickly. I did want to say there's a lot more information on our website. And also, when we finish with this, Julius, you asked what's going to happen. Well, the best practices analysis, if there are practices we find out we're not doing well and we can fix them, we'll fix them. We'll fix them in September. We'll get that straightened out. Policy issues, I think I'm expecting a report back by December, and those will come to me, and then I'll forward them onto the board. Every one of those issues I raised, some may require legislation. I'll let my favorite delegate talk about that in a few minutes. And some may require funding and funding decisions, and that's going to be part of recommendations I make to the county board. So there's that. And the other thing is, I'd like to say, if we had the most perfect police department in the world, and I think we have a very good police department, they do a lot of things very well, we still would have a lot of justice issues in the county. So, let's not forget about education and health equity and voting rights and what's going on with our economy. And those are the things that really sort of permeate our everyday existence along with criminal justice. And I have to put in a plug. I hope everybody on this call has gone to the census website and done their duty, because when it comes to voting rights and representation, the census is what really matters. So last thing is, in the last 2 weeks, I appointed a chief race and equity officer, something that I think was necessary. I think that I insisted on having the word race in it because a lot of people who've been focusing on equity want to skip the part about how racial equity is the true issue that we have. But I had for a while not been a big fan of doing this because I don't want people to get the impression that just because, quote, I picked someone, that now they don't have an obligation to follow through on that. So we're going to do a lot of training, a lot more to come on that. And then I just wanted to wrap up by saying I look forward to any input from you or anybody else, because I have learned that I don't know a heck of a lot and need to be educated, constantly being educated and learning things. So I'll turn it back to you, Julius. I don't know if we're allowing time for questions, but
We are.
At this point, back to you.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions I'm monitoring, looking at Facebook and live, and I'm looking on the chat box here. We have a couple things going on here. So I'm going to throw 3 questions at you, and then I have a question on the back side as well. First question is, once a committee reports back, how will the county manager make the recommendation real? Also, what kind of buy-in do you have from Arlington County Police Department?
Okay, so let me answer that last part first. I have full buy-in from the command staff in the police department, and I've talked to a number of line officers. It's hard for them to express their views independently sometime, but I have, on the 15-member group, I have 3 members of the police department, and I've talked to them specifically and to the chief to say they're not representing the Arlington County Police Department leadership. They're representing their roles. So Captain Latasha Chamberlain, who did a lot of work with internal affairs, Matt Poya, who's a sergeant, and then Scott Warnick, who represents the Benevolent Association. They're there to speak their piece, and senior leadership, as we speak, is setting up briefings and appointments for Marcia Thompson and Julie Shedd, the 2 co-facilitators. How am I going to make them real? Well, people are going to be able to read the report, get to see what the details are, and if there's something in there that's good and I didn't recommend it, well, it's time to call me out on that. I think I told you, Julius and Kent, when we were on the call, you got to stay on my butt if I'm not doing a good job.
All right. There's another question here. It came up twice. SROs, this task force, right? Why does it seem that they've been scoped out of the equation here and not included in this total review of police reform?
Okay, that's an excellent question. The answer is that the review of SROs, I've been asked by the superintendent and members of the school board to not have that as part of this process, because they have a process underway, the school board, where they are going to be reviewing the memorandum of understanding between the Arlington County Police and schools. So in deference to that request, we have pulled that out of the scope. And that's the short answer.
Okay. We may follow back. We may circle back on that in a second. I'm going to pull up Ms. Candace Mosley on Facebook as, will this committee be reviewing the budget of Arlington PD as well to determine whether the funding is appropriate and whether it might be better used in other community-focused services? An example, mental health services.
Right. So the answer is yes, not in the way of saying, okay, well, we're going to cut the budget by 15% because that's just a number. But if the determination is, for example, that our police officers, which they're trained very well in crisis intervention and dealing with mental health issues, but it turns out that it's much better to have that done by other people, social workers, then by definition, if we do not need as many police officers doing that work, then those funds should move from the police department to somewhere else in the budget. So that's absolutely going to be the case. And I would also put in a plug for another piece, which is that I want to make sure the police officers we have are compensated well. I'd like to have more of them living in our community because I think that's also an issue. But yeah, people will be looking at the budget.
Okay. There's another question here in the feed, and then I'm going to ask you, I have a question for you as well. Will there be any recommendations to educate Arlington County Police Department about the history of policing in Arlington, Virginia? Okay,
so that's an excellent question. So one of the things that we have our outside experts looking at is what level of training is provided to our officers on, and I'm talking about something more than, they do implicit bias training, but getting exactly at what you talked about, which is this educational component. There are, I'd say may not make it required reading, but maybe Wilma could, get us a haul of 380 books and we could have everybody read that book, but we could.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we really need to start with people understanding the communities that they police. And I think a lot of our officers do, they take care to do that, but a lot don't. So understanding the history of where you're walking is incredibly important. And that will be a piece of what we take a look at. And so more to come on that. We're going to have, as this committee does its work, I like to call them adjuncts. People come in and provide information and lectures. So we'll probably have a meeting or two that focuses on that issue.
Great. I'm going to ask a question here, and but before I do, I'm not going to set you up there, Mark, because you're a friend. But I'm going to share something with you, and I want to get your take on it because we had two members of our branch. Here it is. Two members of our branch have approached the NAACP and want to know our flag, our current flag, right, is symbolic of the Robert E. the Arlington House, right? Formerly named after Curtis Lee. These members have sent several letters to the county with no reply. One, have you heard of this? Has there been some discussion at the county level as it relates to our current flag and what it symbolizes? And if so, can you elaborate a little bit and tell us, is there a way forward? What's your thoughts on this? We all know enough about Robert E. Lee and what he stood for. We see right now that schools, roads, and everything are being renamed. But if in our current flag, that place, which we have another image here right beside it, is symbolic of a place where Robert E. Lee, listen, I don't need to tell you, what's your thoughts on it?
So let me answer the first part of that question, which is the question was, am I aware that people have written in and expressed concern on that? Absolutely, I'm very much aware of that. And I've had conversations with some department heads, and I can't really speak specifically to conversations the county board members have had. So I'm really going to take a pass on that piece. As far as my view on it, I think that it requires a very serious look. I would say that my gut tells me that if there would be a way for us to change it, I would be very comfortable with it. And I'm not going to say more than that because I haven't given it a huge amount of thought at the moment. But I have some very strong views about everything named after Robert E. Lee. I think focusing on the Lee Center, Lee Highway, And that's what we just recently said is the place to start. And I think that the Lee, the symbol of our flag gets a little bit more complicated because it represents a lot more than just Robert E. Lee. But having said that, it is, people know what that is. And you know, I'm not coming down firmly one way or the other. I'm doing a bit of hemming and hawing because I haven't really thought it through. But
yeah, you're tap dancing, Mark, but that's okay. I understand. It's not your fault. We're friends. I just want to put it out there because we at the NAACP, you know what we stand for. So when we have members and individuals come to us and ask these questions and they show to us that they've engaged our elected leadership, you know, this is why, you know, you're here and we just wanted to ask you the same question. It's good to hear that you've entertained, I've heard, this is not the first time you've heard about it, and we hope and expect that the, you know, elected leadership in Arlington County will look at this seriously, and because I think we may need, and I can't speak for everyone, we may need another flag, but that's just Julius.
Julius, I did want to add one thing, which is that, and I know I was tap dancing, there's another range of issues too, which have to do with the way, you know, our Gunston School and Wakefield School, those are named after plantations, okay? And so there's a lot, when we're having conversations in the country about Army bases named after Confederate generals, I think that that's a very legitimate kind of conversation to have. We've gone back and looked at all the streets in Arlington. It turns out, you know, Jackson Street, named after President Jackson, you may have a different view on that. There's one street, not highway, Stewart Street, which is where Washington Liberty High School faces, is named after Jeb Stuart. That's the only street in the county, which actually really surprised me, given that all the streets were named in 1932. I was shocked that there weren't more. So we're looking at it.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna get out to the exit field. Are there any questions out there? If anyone who's watching, we have about 73 people on right now. If you have a question for the county manager, feel free to, oh, thank you, Emma Viola Sanchez. We need to change the logo, the flag, Arlington House needs to be eliminated. Those are her comments. But if
you know, if I could just say to Emma, she is a hard person to refuse.
Well, we're moving along. Listen, if anyone has questions to the county manager, please unmute yourself and state your comments. Is that you, Wilma?
Yes, it is. And I just wanted to ask Mark if he was serious about that 308 books, because I have people who will fund that if you can sure that they will read it.
I was absolutely serious about that. I think there's not only that.
But tomorrow, we'll talk offline. I've got people who will fund. But the only thing is, I'm gonna add. I'm gonna say that they got to let me come in and talk to them after they read it.
Well, no, you're going to be, so you want to be guest faculty. That'd be fine. I mean, I'm not going to pay you a speaker's fee.
And can I bring in some guest speakers who might have had some experiences with Arlington County Police?
You know, the short answer is yes, but I want you to know that this group of 15 people, I'm not going to tell them what to do. They're going to figure that out. So you could talk with Kent, who's you know, tell him that it has to happen.
I was speaking of your comment stating that you wish you could have 308 of my books.
I meant that.
All right. I will email you tomorrow. And if you want to, thank you.
Sure.
Mark, now I just want you to know, full disclosure, you're being recorded by NAACP.
That's fine.
You're on the record. I love you. Listen, is there any other remarks out there for our county manager? Any questions? If not, we're gonna thank him for his time and attention this evening. Mark, you know, I'm glad we have open lines of communication, and your service is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Julie. I just want, at the risk of swelling your head a little bit, I want everybody to know that you're doing a great job. You've been on me in a good way for a long time. So thanks.
Do I need to talk about those Fig Newtons, Mark?
No. All right, I'm gonna mute myself now. See you later.
Okay, bye. All right, next we have, thank you, County Manager Mark Swartz for coming on. Our delegate in the 6th term, Virginia House of Delegates, 47th District, the Honorable Patrick A. Hope. Are you out there, Pat?
Good evening, I'm here.
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me, Julius. I appreciate the forum, the opportunity to be here. You had Senator Favola talk about what the Senate is doing. I want to talk a little bit about what the House is doing on criminal justice reform and police reform. We're taking a slightly different tack. The Senate Democrats put out a list of different items that they want to work on. The House is more open to public comment than anything else. We've seen some good lists and there's some good ideas. And it's actually apropos to what Mark was talking about and the county's doing, very progressive in what they're working on, because those are some of the things that we're talking about as in the House. And I'll talk in specifics about those. But broadly speaking, we're going to have 3 hearings. The first hearing is going to start on Wednesday, July the 22nd. They're going to be 3-hour hearings. We'll have another one July the 29th and another one August the 6th. And so we're really looking for public comment to tell us what we should be doing. We've heard a lot of different groups and a lot of different advocates, and we've seen lists that people have put out, but we really want some details. We want to conceptualize, but also to think how these things will work and go into place. And so we're going to have some experts that go in, some national experts, some statewide experts to give us their perspective, but we're going to allow about an hour's worth at each meeting for public comment. And so if you're interested, I can get you the link that you can send out, Julius, but it's online already for people to sign up. This is going to be a joint hearing process. I chair the Public Safety Committee and the Courts of Justice Committee, chaired by our leader, Charnel Herring, on a range of different topics. And each hearing is going to have a topic that's going to assign to it. But I do want you to know that we are talking internally about how we're going to operationalize the special session, which takes place on the 18th. It's not going to be something where we go in and we go out on the 18th. We're probably going to be in session for 2, maybe 3 weeks. And we will put different ideas and different bills together to address those issues. But so broadly speaking, some of the themes that we're looking at are accreditation and training of law enforcement, de-escalation, implicit bias training, body worn cameras, obviously is a big topic here. It's something that I personally am in favor of in terms of transparency and accountability, something that Arlington has already taken the first step to do. Civilian oversight boards as well too. Arlington again is taking a step in that direction. They need legal authority in order to set up these civilian oversight boards to actually have final decision power. We want to give them authority for subpoena power, but we also want to give them the final decision. If there's a disciplinary action right now, they can only be advisory. We think that they need to have more disciplinary, some final oversight attached to them. We're going to look at criminal justice reform. There are a number of different things that I can go on that we're going to be doing on criminal justice reform. If you look back at our session that we had, very historic in many ways, on criminal justice reform, it was kind of underwhelming. And our members recognize that now and want to take some decisive action. We're going to have a segment on officer response and demilitarizing efforts. Those are things that Mark was talking about, specifically about when you call the police for someone that's trespassing on your property, or they're seriously mentally ill, or so there's a homeless person. Why do you need to dispatch the police? I think there's a lot of new ways of thinking about how we can use law enforcement, but also use, more importantly, mobile unit mental health counselors instead. And so there's a lot of discussion around that. And finally, we're going to look at police misconduct and accountability as well. I think I would say this, the General Assembly is going to take action. I think it's one of those times when you're living in the moment where history is being created. You don't really quite know it, but we are sensing that the ground is shifting. And it's not really a matter of if we're going to do it. It's really a matter of what are we going to do and how we're going to do it. And of course, it's when are we going to do it, because we have a special session that is very, very narrow in some of the topics it can deal with. Plus, we might need some time to think about some of the complexity of rolling out some of these things. Then you've got the 2021 session, but we clearly can show that the ground is shifting. Let me talk specifically about some items that, again, not getting ahead of ourselves, because we are looking at this as being public hearings where the public, we want to hear from the public. But we are talking about SROs. Not a lot of funding comes from the state to Arlington on SROs. In fact, our total budget at the state level for SROs is a little over $5 million. But we do think that we need to rethink SROs in their role. Do we need SROs? Is that $5 million better spent having a mental health or substance abuse counselor in the school instead? And so having these types of assessments to really ask the question, what is the purpose of an SRO? I mentioned mandatory implicit bias training, de-escalation, body worn cams, the civilian review and oversight. I've already mentioned big important thing there is to make sure that they have subpoena power. And we have people on the civilian oversight boards who know how to conduct an investigation. That's really important. De-emphasizing police. I will tell you, if you talk to law enforcement in terms of arresting someone who's homeless or mentally ill, they're either arrested on drunk in public, failure to ID, or trespassing. And you think of a situation where a 7-Eleven store clerk has someone standing in front of their door asking people for money, they call the police. There's no reason why the police needs to come and intervene in that situation. It would be much better to dispatch someone that is a mental health counselor. And then, of course, on criminal justice reform, which is really the civil rights issue of our time. There's a lot of really good stuff that we are looking very closely at. Again, I want to emphasize this. It's a question of, do we have the capacity to deal with some of these reforms in the special session, which is only a month away, or do we need to wait until 2021? Expungement is on the table for us to deal with. You think about someone right now under current law, expungement is only allowed for dismissal or acquittal of crimes. Very, very narrow. And so we need to broaden the definition of what gets expunged and when it gets expunged so that someone can get a job, can get a licensure in different profession, housing, et cetera. Obviously, marijuana legalization as well, too, is being studied at the Crime Commission. Mandatory minimums. We have over 200 mandatory minimums in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They were largely put in place piecemeal. These are like brochure type bills that people would put in to give long sentences for individuals. We don't want to dismantle them one at a time. We want to look at this in a comprehensive way and dismantle them all at one time. You've probably heard some discussion about pretextual stops for law enforcement. Law enforcement, by just some subjective feeling, can pull you over because they smell marijuana, as an example. Or they think that the tinting on your window of your car is too dark and they can pull you over. They can pull you over because you have a rosary beads hanging on your rear view mirror and they think it might obstruct your view, that the exhaust system might be too loud, making too much noise, and they can pull you over. And then usually what they do is they find some other charge to have you arrested. And maybe it's on a suspended license or some other infraction. And so we'll take a look at pretextual stops. We'll also take a look, and I give a lot of credit to my colleague, who's just a freshman from Portsmouth, Delegate Don Scott, who's pushed very hard on criminal justice reform when it comes to good sentencing credits. If you are acting on good behavior, you should be eligible to be released for good time. And then lastly, what we're looking on doing is reinstating parole. And it's not just reinstating parole, but there's other variables related to geriatric release and compassionate release, someone who has a home plan where they can go to and they can be released. And so we have a parole board there. We got 5 members. I think 2 are full-time. The other 3 are not full-time. We need to be using the parole board, and we need to make sure that people can get the opportunity and get that second chance to be released. So Julius, let me go ahead and stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about our process or some of the things that we're considering.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you again, Pat, for your leadership and what you have done and will continue to do. I know even in the special session, we've all been engaged in some way, shape, or form. I'll tell you today, I was on a virtual call earlier with the just listening on the progressive, the Commonwealth attorneys. It's like 14 or 15 of them here in the Commonwealth that has some, our own Commonwealth attorney, Carissa Degani Tafi was on there. Very good positions. I was also on a call later this afternoon with leadership of the state level NAACP, speaking with the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and what their priorities are going to be for the special session. And it's good to hear what you have going on. We know it's going to be a heavy lift in the special session. We can't accomplish, you're not going to accomplish it all. Some things are going to get pushed to the special session. We got that. But what I want to do now, because you offered, there's a number of questions in the chat box. Some of them you may see, but if not, I'll go ahead and get started with a couple of them. Question from Barbara Franklin. What about ending qualified immunity for police officers in Virginia? What about supporting police officers to forcibly stop colleagues from acting extrajudicially, ensuring that those officers are supported by leadership as opposed to getting fired?
Yes.
That's one question.
All of those things will be for consideration. Just because I did mention them doesn't mean that
yeah. Just one, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Those will all be considered.
Great. Mike Higgins is asking, what does obviously marijuana legalization study mean? And will you support Delegate Jennifer Calfoy's renewed attempt to legalize small amounts of marijuana in VA, noting, among other arguments, in favor racial disparities in law enforcement?
Yes. Yes, and the study is not likely to be complete in time for the special session. So this is something that's going to be for 2021 regular session.
Yeah.
And when I say the study, just so everyone knows, the Crime Commission has a number of different things that they are looking at, and this one will not be ready in time. But I fully expect and will support legalization in 2021.
Krista Rosa says, don't forget about automatic restoration of rights for returning citizens, Delegate Cope.
Yes, and that is more of a constitutional amendment. And I think that you should start seeing some, in terms of the cadence in which we can do a constitutional amendment, you'll start to see that in 2021. And so we likely could put this on the ballot in a 2022 referendum for the voters. We need to change our constitution for that.
Ms. Pamela Pinnock is asking, have you or other delegates had bias training, any form of bias training?
No, we have not. And that's a very good suggestion for us to do. We have a number of different types. So we have sexual harassment training, and that's something that we've done recently. But I think that's a good suggestion, and I'll take it back.
Thank you for taking that back. So NAACP National, you spoke about civilian review boards with subpoena power. I understand the lay of the land, what needs to happen, and there's going to be maybe a few challenges. Can we talk about decertification, open records, state records for police officers briefly?
Yeah, no, we can, because that's something that we are considering. But one issue that the Legal Aid and Justice Center brought to me the other day was about FOIA, Freedom of Information. A lot of that information is not available to the public on behavior of public safety officials, people who interact with the public in terms of maybe it's disciplines, or maybe they've been fired or engaged in an investigation. And they've been asking for that to be eligible for Freedom of Information. I think we're going to discuss that, or we're going to discuss whether that information should be available to the public, or whether it should be at a minimum available to the civilian oversight review boards to know someone's record. But certainly whenever there's hiring, we've got to know the past behavior of the person that they're considering to hire. And that's something that I think you'll see in this special session.
Some of these questions, Pat, that I'm going to read out to you, they may be issues you're working on, but I'm going to ask them anyway. What can be done to make Virginia State Police more accountable to the communities they serve? And can anything be done to allow city and county governments to shape the presence and role of state troopers in their communities?
Well, I mean, I think for the first question, this is really the theme of what we're trying to do, is look for accountability for law enforcement. Body worn cams is something that you can start with in terms of doing that. Different types of certification type programs as well too, making sure that they have the adequate training involved. That's certainly something that we can do to put some more accountability and transparency in the Virginia State Police. That will take funding, but it's something that we are committed to doing. Let's see, allow city and county governments to shape the presence and role state troopers in the community. That's not something that I have heard about, and I have to think more about what that would mean in terms of because it really depends on the engagement of the state trooper. Arlington, for example, is you see very much Virginia, you don't see many Virginia State Police in Arlington County. And the reason why that is because we've got a police force and we have a sheriff's department. There are a lot of law enforcement agencies that just have a sheriff's department is all they have. And then you see Virginia State Police much more in those areas. And so I think it probably would depend on what level of involvement you already have in law enforcement as to how that would be shaped. That's not something that I've heard before, but it's certainly something that I'd like to understand a little bit more.
Great. I'm going to reach out to the education committee. I see if Simone's on. You know, Pat, again, we want to thank you for what you did last session. You know, a contingent of us here at the Arlington branch at NAACP. You sponsored a bill, literacy bill for us. Simone, are you present?
Present.
Okay. I just wanted to, you know, Pat, we all know what happened with that bill. What are we looking to have happen perhaps in the coming year with the bill that was, I would say, in other words, tabled?
Well, I have a commitment from the Department of Education to re-engage on the issue. It's one of the bills that I have the most regret that didn't make it out to the governor's desk. And it's one of those things that could really address a lot of social inequities in our environment here, especially for those in education area. I work very closely with, and for those of you that don't know what we're doing, we're looking at trying to create a reading screener that can detect any reading issues with children in our schools. And the current screener that we use misses a lot of kids. There's no other way to put it. And there are screeners out there that we know of that are much better. And we need to put them into our code to require them so that we can catch these kids earlier and give them the structured learning that they need in order to catch up and to be successful in life. And so that's something that I've committed to Simone and working with others that we're going to do. And we're going to do that. We're going to keep at it. Simone, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yes, and to add to require structured literacy instruction for those students that are identified as having a reading difficulty. But hopefully the state will even consider that, because Virginia's reading scores are very, very poor. They've gone down years in a row, and only about a third of our students are reading at the proficient level or above, which is appalling.
It is. It's a civil rights issue. And
absolutely.
And you know, with the pandemic, things are just going to get worse, and we're missing more kids. Every year we don't address this problem. So it's a real shame. The worst part is the Department of Education knows they have a problem and they're just not doing anything about it. And that's what this bill was to do, is to light a fire, to try to get things done. But I'm determined to get it back. And I've asked for a meeting with the secretary, which I hope I'll get very soon, and we'll re-engage on that issue.
Thanks. Look forward to working with you again on that.
Thank you, Simone. You're a great advocate.
We have a few other questions, but also about 2 minutes left with Delegate Hope. Is there anyone else out there? We have about 73 people still on the line. Does anyone want to come up and ask Delegate Hope a question? If so, just unmute yourself and feel free to ask.
Actually, one other question, Pat. As far as legislation, if we could look at breaking down the barrier legislatively that prevents counties like Arlington from providing free or at a very low cost internet access to our residents, because the current grant that we have now with Comcast for our farm residents, that runs out in a year. And so we need something more sustainable for the long term.
Absolutely agree. And especially if we're going to be relying more on virtual learning. Absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more.
Pat, there's a question that came up twice. Has there been any discussion about mandatory minimums?
Yes, absolutely. And that is going to be something we're going to look at. Unfortunately, it will not be ready for the special session, But that is a study. I asked for that study during the session, and we're going to study it through the Crime Commission. I'd like them to make one comprehensive recommendation. Our mandatory minimums are way, way too high. They're way outside the sentencing guidelines, and they're unfair,
Yeah.
to put quite simply. And so I'd like to have a recommendation from the Crime Commission, and I'd like to take a comprehensive swipe at the mandatory minimums.
Okay, Pat, what I'm gonna do here, I'm not trying to throw you a curveball, but you know, this past week, we lost a civil rights icon, and that in the name of Representative John Lewis. And he's been around. Is there anything you want to share with our community here and to the Facebook Live participants about John Lewis and what you may know of him, or any words? Because I would like to have a moment of silence to recognize all the hard work he's done for our nation. And is there anything you want to say before we have a moment of silence?
I mean, the only thing I would say is you've probably heard many people recite his quote about, if you see something, to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the moment that we're in right now. And you create good trouble. That's the moment that we're in right now. This moment for criminal justice and police reform, we have to take action, and we have to carry the mantle that he so far carried so far for all of us. We got to take it from here. And so that's what really resonates with me. And I think it resonates with a lot of my colleagues of how we want to continue and to endure his legacy.
Thank you for those words. And if everyone who's on the line, if you don't mind, for the next 30 seconds, we're going to just have a moment of silence and memorial for Representative John Lewis. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. You can, I think we have Ms. Warner on the background controls in the back. You can unmute. So Pat, thank you again for your time. We are closing up the meeting now. The NAACP, I know at the state level and even here at the branch level, we will have some participate in those hearings. We will have something substantive to bring. I know there's a Northern Virginia coalition of NAACP branches that are working hard behind the scenes to bring forth our legislative priorities as well. So we look forward to seeing you down there, either virtually or perhaps not in person, but thank you very much, and you're always welcome. And for those of you who don't know, Pat is also a member of the Arlington branch NAACP. Thank you, Pat. I want to go back. There was a question that came up. I'm not sure if Mark Schwartz is still on. Mark, are you still on? Perhaps not. Okay. Right now, do we have any what we would call for the good of the order from any of the members that are on the call or guests? If so, please unmute yourself and you're free to have a conversation or ask a question. Okay, so if I may, if you're interested, if you're not a member of the NAACP, you should become a member. Go to our website, NAACP Arlington branch. You can Google that and become a member. If you are a member and you want to be part of our, okay, I just got a note. If you are a member and you want to be part of our committees, one of our committees, just let us know, send us an email, and we will get you engaged. Is the first vice president on, Kent Carter? Okay. Just Warren, Jessica just shared our link. Okay, we're going to end a little bit early. Does anyone, any committee chairs have anything you want to bring to the group before we close tonight? Detta, Cherie, James? Okay. You all look lovely out there. We still have 68 participants holding on and about 30 people online, so that's great. Thank you for your time and attention. We will be back again next month. Just to let you know, the executive committee will be taking up a vote this Thursday on SROs in the Arlington Public School System. So more to follow on that. We have been reviewing a lot of data, the reports from SRO and the MOA and the MOU. So a decision will be made on the direction of the NAACP, or our position, I would say, as it relates to school resource officers. So more to follow. If you have any questions about that, feel free to email us or call me directly, and or any of the members of the Education Committee. With that being said, just got a note here. Thank you, Grace, for joining. With that being said, I wish you all a good night. Remain safe, wear your mask, wear PPE gear, have some hand sanitizer. Get tested. Get tested. Nothing wrong with getting tested. If those of you that follow me on Facebook, I was driving through DC over the weekend, and they had a test going on. No one was in line in DC at a church. No one was in line. So I said, you know what? I'm Arlington. Do you take Arlingtonians? Can we get a test? Sure, come on in. You know, protect others. Protect others. So take the test. We're not past COVID-19 right now, and we know that our people of color, communities of color, are disproportionately being affected by this deadly disease, and we have to do our due diligence until some type of vaccine or something comes around to eradicate this, and we get beyond it. But until then, be safe, my friends, and we will see you soon. Good night.